Now I'd like to welcome Melissa Lavoie, technology educator, an instructional designer, and GIS specialist in Northern Ontario, empowering Indigenous youth in citizen science through data collection and analysis. And Melissa, if you'd please present on GIS in action within education.
Thank you, Lynn. Can everyone see my screen okay? Things that presenters say.
Looks good, looks great.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is my helicopter ride over the Moose River because it wasn't frozen at that time when I went to present at a school there, in Moose Factory. So they take helicopters across the river. And so what I'm going to be basically talking about with all of you, and hopefully I can keep within the 10 minutes. So this is a lofty goal, but I think we can do it. I'm going to be talking about 3 GIS projects that I've done when I was employed with Mushkegowuk Council in Timmins, Ontario. I'm not there anymore. Now I'm an instructional designer. I work remotely for a Canadian company. But when I was there, I was employed as a GIS Education Specialist. But I always say that I'm still learning. I don't have a GIS background, so I'm definitely a learner. But during my time there, I was part of the CreeGeo Education team, and we basically focused on any and all opportunities to bring youth, elders, and technologies together for land-based learning and activities. So some of these projects, the GIS tools that I used was basically ArcGIS Online, Survey 123, Collector, and we also made a dashboard that I'll show you for one of our projects. So our first project was a GIS day, and I've done a couple in my time there, but this was when I was in Moose Factory. And basically our workshop included 3 parts. So I think it was Ewan that was talking about that Maclean's article with the jobs that employ GIS, and we definitely touched on that too. So we just basically, it was an introduction to GIS, what it's used for, careers, a look at traditional uses of GIS. So you'll see in the next little part that my partner there spoke about traditional knowledge interviews that we conducted and on paper maps, and then we digitized those points. So those would be used for land use and occupancy mapping in First Nations communities. And then a practical component where we worked with the wonderful Angela at Esri Canada, and she set up the students with ArcGIS Online accounts. And I dropped my presentation in there if anyone, would like to look, but that's Eddie right there. He's great. So we posted our learning goals, and then while Eddie was talking, I scribed some notes for traditional uses of GIS, and we went through a practical application of GIS as well. So we explored a current issue with Canada's drinking water and lead content. And drinking water is kind of a hot topic, unfortunately, in a lot of First Nations communities. But we also focused on those 3 questions: where is it, why is it there, why is it important, or why care? And our aim out of this investigative report was to determine some of the issues there and how GIS could help unearth that, visualize the data, and help. So some potential answers could have included, like, there was no record of where lead service lines were in the communities where they tested the water, costly and intrusive methods to replace the lead pipes. So as the students viewed the video, we talked about that. And then, we moved quickly into ArcGIS Online. So how can something like GIS help? And I wanted to bring a more abstract concept to this new kind of introduction to spatial technologies class into something practical. So we basically made a web map and feature layer for the students. And as you can see, you might not be able to see, but we tried to visualize some lead pipes here depicted in red. And we wanted to, the scenario was a community hired them to create a map to show where the lead pipes are and to prioritize which pipes to change out first. So as you can see, there's one that leads to an abandoned building, and then there's some that lead to residential, houses. So they quickly came to the conclusion, because they're super smart, that they'd probably, be best to change out those pipes first. But, you could see the students' wheels turning, and they were looking at it from like an accessible perspective, like, oh, I can do this. And then we quickly moved into them actually making, some map features, and they really liked this part of the presentation. So that was a really great GIS day for me personally. Second project was our Mush Guardians project. And back in 2017, the government of Canada invested in a national Indigenous Guardians network, across Canada. And the Mush Guardians was kind of a youth initiative attached to that. So we obtained some funding through that pocket of money. And this was a climate summit that Mushkegowuk Council puts on every year. And this was the first year that we brought a youth panel and some of my youth participants through the Mush Guardians program to Timmins, which was really cool. So basically what they did was we used technologies like Collector and Survey 123 and ArcGIS Online and GPS units, as you can see from this photo, to track, instances of climate change, like looking at water content in the snow, and just looking at, weather, observing weather changes where they are. And the Indigenous Guardians, they're the gatekeepers of the land. They're highly trained and skilled to manage, their land and what takes place on their land, and then they report back. So I believe this was in Fort Albany, and we had two pilot schools. This was one in Pewanik in Winnisk First Nation, and we were establishing our research plots. So it was in their baseball field. They also learned how to navigate using GPS, but they also learned about traditional ways to navigate snow and the different types of snow from an elder here, as you can see on the far right. And these were students in Attawapskat, and they are holding kits with rain or snow rain gauges to measure water content. And we had a bunch of things for them to measure, and Collector was used to input weekly measurements. And they also established a research plot, as you could see here. And so we focused on mobile data collection using Collector. And what I did was we established a relational database or a table. So basically the research plots remain consistent, and they were given a plot ID, but depending on which community the youth were gathering their data in, Collector will take you there on the map. If you want to see that, you're more than welcome to go ahead. And I don't know if my presentation will be shared after, but so the data collection was based on the Omushkego calendar, which has 6 seasons as opposed to our 4. So we I guess established this. It was in the freezing up in winter, so that's why we did some activities in like with snow. And unfortunately, I had left before I had left my employment at Mushkegowuk, and I believe we didn't get funding in that last little bit. So I'm not sure if it continued after my leaving, but I hope it did. I hope the project continued. But I know the kids really enjoyed it, and they learned a lot. And this third project was called Trash Trackers, and it unofficially began as a community cleanup event in Chapleau Cree First Nation. And it was basically one of our employees ran an Eco Warriors Club after school. And she initially invited me to, do a project with the kids. And what I did was I used Survey 123, as you can see on your screen here. And basically, it's a survey where kids can track the types of trash that they find, on the ground. So this was more in the spring, early summer. And we discussed about the recyclability of items. And so we did some pre-teaching, categorization of different types of trash. And then we wanted them to add a description and the area characteristics. So where did they see it? Because that tells a story, right? So what types of trash, like if there's particular brand names, or if there's a highly populated area, if there's no trash cans in close proximity. So these are all things that we discussed afterwards. And with that comes the wonderful Esri dashboard. And this was used to track all waste items. And it updated them on their efforts. So this is where we left off. I think they really, and you can interact with the different components of the map here. So you have the item here, which was a receipt. It was on a patch of grass. It was recyclable, and it was categorized as paper or cardboard. So as you move on the map, there's the other components also change. So it's really cool. The kids really love to see their efforts, being recognized and updating in real time. I think that was a really, it was really good for them to see, and it felt like they were a part of something bigger. It's that old adage, think globally, but act locally. So those are just some of the tools that we had used. And these are some more trash trackers in action. And I will have you know that it was freezing on this day in Attawapiskat, but the kids bravely took to the streets and with their Survey 123 apps on tablets, and they collected some garbage as well. And they also loved seeing their efforts tracked in real time using dashboards. So that was really cool. And I just think that students in general loves that citizen science aspect, that the mobile data collection and being a part of change. So that's just one small part of what GIS can do for us. I think that I'm probably over my time.
Yeah. No, Melissa, that was wonderful. And,
Great.
yeah, I don't know if you just want to do a concluding sentence on your fantastic work here.
No, you know what? I really enjoyed my time at Mushkegowuk Council. I continued to do some work with them. I would travel back and forth to do GIS activities with the kids. And I just really loved working with elders and people who knew way more than I about their land, about mapping, about all of the different use cases for those. And I learned a lot during my time there. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks.